let's start with cancer. Let's talk about what cancer is.
Always a good opener.
Yeah.
That's what I do at dinner parties or
Something
with
light.
You guys hear about cancer?
You guys want to talk about cancer? Let's open with a little cancer discussion.
So cancer, the reason cancer is so hard, and I had a family member who, the past couple years, who was dramatically affected by this. So I'm partially focused on that for that reason, but also cancer, obviously, extremely big deal. The reason cancer is hard to cure is because cancer cells are your body's own cells, and the DNA is mutated to where the cell now thinks it should just be growing and expanding constantly and not dying. So that's where a tumor comes from. It is the cells expanding repeatedly, and they're programmed to think that's what they're supposed to do, and they just keep expanding. They try to not die, and this goes on and on and on. And then that causes problems, not only because you have a physical thing in your body somewhere, but also because it's growing so rapidly, it's consuming all this energy, it's potentially releasing enzymes that are causing all these different problems. So cancer in particular is not like other, let's say, a bacteria where it's like this thing comes into your body. Cancer is your own cells that are just mutated and they're doing the wrong thing. And that makes it very, very hard for your body to correctly identify this is a bad cell that is behaving badly, because on the surface it kind of looks, well, this looks legit. This is a totally legitimate thing.
This one's ours.
This is ours.
Yeah,
this one's ours.
Yo,
Let it go.
yo, we're chill.
Yeah.
On top, there's more complexity to this. Oh yeah, by the way, disclaimer: I am not a biochemist. So as much as I typically claim to know everything about everything, there might be slight, broad generalizations here.
You were telling us before the pod that like biochem or whatever was the class you wanted to. Your parents made
I
you quit.
almost
Wow.
failed out of biology
Yeah,
in high school. That was the only grade I ever got where I got like a D- on a test, and that was right when World of Warcraft released Blackwing Lair in,
So it's understandable.
in 2006 or 7, and that's a raid. It's a 40-man raid. You got to show up a couple hours every night, and I was not learning biology. So this is like the core problem with cancer, and so we basically have 3 ways to treat it right now. One is chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is where you put a drug in your body that is specifically meant to attack fast-growing cells. Because one of the hallmarks of cancer, like its whole thing, is it just keeps growing and it doesn't die, right? So if you get a drug that is able to identify cells that grow really fast, then that drug can go in and be like, aha, you're growing way too fast, you're a tumor cell.
Caught you.
Kill it, yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is there's other parts of our body that grow really fast. For example, bone marrow. Ooh, and you do want that. Like,
Right.
bone marrow is actually helpful. Also, your hair. That's like chemo has worked a lot on you. And then
And chemo is radiation.
Did you
treatment,
say
right?
chemo
No.
has worked
Or is
a lot
radiation?
on me?
Radiation is different than chemo.
yes, we'll get to that.
Right.
I was attempting a ball joke, and I don't know if it really landed, but I think the audience is so desperate
got
and hungry for ball jokes, they'll be like, nice
I'm
one,
not even
Doug.
particularly bald today. I actually look a little.
You really got him. That was clever. Way to work it in. So chemotherapy is like one of the main 3 ways we treat cancer. This is, you basically are giving yourself poison that attacks fast-growing cells, and you do a bunch of collateral damage in the process because you're killing off a bunch of your own fast-growing cells.
Yeah, my understanding is chemo is it's attacking you're like hedging that your body can tolerate the damage done to
Yes.
the rest of its systems while the chemo destroys the cancer.
Yes. It's like it's like the end of Fight Club. You're like pointing a gun at yourself, and you'll be like, I'll pull the trigger. I'll fucking do it, man.
It's badass.
And so, yeah, no, it's bad. And so for people who have had, friends or family who have gone through chemotherapy, the reason you feel like fucking terrible the whole time, why it's brutal, is like your stomach lining, for example, fast-growing cells. So if you're killing your stomach lining, you're going to get nauseous and inflammation and indigestion and all these horrible things. Your bone marrow, which is helping, run your immune system, that's getting shot to all hell. So there's all these negatives. And you can't even, every person is kind of different with how tumors show up, which we'll get to later. So you don't even know the effect that a chemo is going to have unless you start it. So chemo, it's like one of our best things right now that we have. The second is radiation. Radiation is where you are applying basically high energy at cells. So most often what this means is you take like a gun and you shoot electromagnetic radiation at cells. And this is bad for cells.
I can tell this is an American podcast because all of our metaphors are
Yeah.
about how different treatments are like different types of gun.
So chemotherapy is like a lot of little guns in your body that go
Chemotherapy is
around
like
shooting.
Yeah. Your body can only take so much
Much
burger.
burger.
But if you eat
But you
enough of the
wanna eat a
burger,
lot of
it's rid of
burger.
the
I
Okay.
So radiation is a little different. What you're doing is, you can literally think of it as a gun, kind of. You are shooting a high energy beam of electromagnetic waves at a target. And radiation is not good for cells. It kills cells. Basically, it fucks up the DNA in a cell, and that makes it either kill itself or it will over time die. So radiation in the body is super bad. It is in the same way shooting yourself in the chest is bad.
I've heard.
It is not good for you. But in theory, let's say you could point a gun just at the cancer tumor and just shoot that. Well, that actually could be great. So radiation, which is a thing you do not want in your body, if we kind of like have a narrow beam that we target directly at the tumor, can hit just the tumor, that actually can help kill off a bunch of those cells and prevent it from growing to the same extent. So that's radiation. As you can imagine, also not ideal. We are shooting radiation beams into the body and just trying to avoid shooting all the other stuff. And then the third is surgery, which is if you are able to, in some cases, you just cut the tumor out. But that is basically like, you have to get to a point where the tumor hasn't spread. If it's spread around the body, called metastasizing, you're kind of fucked at that point because it's all over the place and it's already spreading. And it's more about like a broad treatment like chemo that's going to have the best chance of attacking it versus surgery, which is a very specific thing. So there's a lot of people who get, cancer, for example, let's say pancreatic cancer, and maybe they're able to get a surgery and cut that out of the pancreas, causes a whole lot of collateral damage. And if you're lucky, you got it before the cancer spread.
I see. Yep.
Yeah. So if cancer spreads, it's really bad. And there's, quick more terminology, and then we'll get to the kind of like treatment of it. So you have all these scans to determine if somebody has cancer. So you've probably heard of things like x-rays, CT scans, MRIs, biopsies, ultrasounds. Basically, there's different categories of how we scan the human body, see what's in there, and then doctors are able to go, okay, this or this or this thing is happening.
I watch House MD. I'm kind of an expert. Yeah.
The thing is, with cancer, it could be lupus, but that doesn't explain the headaches. It's so something like 99% of the time it is lupus.
Right.
Is
Yeah, that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a
Cancer
expert.
specifically.
Lupus is the key.
So what we're going to keep coming back to is radiation. Radiation is, again, it's like really, really high energy waves, like X-rays or literally shooting protons, and that kills cells. So you don't want the body to get a lot of radiation, but we can use it to learn what's going on in the body or to kill cells if we want to. So an X-ray, if you go get an X-ray, you're shooting radiation into your body. And basically the energy as it goes through, you see that it is being absorbed by certain parts of the body, like a bone or whatever, and that allows you to see if a bone is broken.
This ties my closest friend from college. He's studying to become a medical physicist right now. And I didn't know this was a job a year ago.
Yeah.
I didn't know this existed. And their position is to create like the radioactive isotopes that these sorts of machines and treatments use.
Yeah.
And there's a really limited of these like residencies and positions for this role in the country. And he's studying that right now at university. And it's wild. I never thought about like, they're not like the X-ray technician. They're not the person like performing the actual treatment. They're creating the radioactive isotope that the treatments or the machines use to do these things.
Keep it grounded. He's making a gun.
He's basically making a gun.
He's making a gun.
So he's trying to find safer ones, I assume. My understanding is that, an X-ray is a lower dose of radiation,
Yeah.
but like if you do a bunch of X-rays, that's also
bad.
It's very damaging to your body. In the same way
So
that-
this is the whole thing
Yeah.
that it gets back to. So there's all these different ways of scanning your body. An X-ray, we've all done that, right? It shows you bones. But if you want to get more detail, you do a CT scan. A CT scan is where you go in and your body, to put it simply, you get a bunch of X-rays. So it's doing X-rays on many, many different planes of your body. So you're getting a shitload. And from that, you can kind of make a map of the body. You get more detail. But the problem is you just got a shitload of X-rays. That's
Yeah.
a bunch of radiation in the body, which again is not good. That's going to damage healthy cells. Radiation also, ironically, can create cancer cells because if you're messing up the DNA in cells, that can cause them to become cancerous. So one of the most powerful things we have, radiation, to learn what's going on in the body and get rid of cancer, also can create cancer if you're not careful.
Is there a counterpoint where this is how most superheroes are made? So is there a chance that you could get?
So
I don't know if
we've
you
been
brought
running
up that.
a lot. Like
What is
kind
it?
of ignored
Yeah,
that.
what's ChatGPT got to say about that?
About like how
we ran a test to basically see if that would work on anybody. It was called Chernobyl, and we're still waiting.
still waiting for a Russian
Results.
superhero.
Right,
It
right.
really
and
is.
so far,
We
that
haven't really
hasn't
given that
happened.
enough time
Yeah.
to stew.
Ovechkin. I think.
Ovechkin. And who's the karate guy? He came out of Russia. Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal also from
Your theory is that he had a Chernobyl
Right.
radiation that
right.
made him.
He was one of the test
This
subjects.
is good. This is
I
good.
didn't know that. That's a fact, though.
Yeah, but
Okay.
but most of the test subjects again do die because radiation is
To be
bad
clear,
for
yes,
you and it's not
okay.
good.
All right.
So yeah. So
Okay.
then the kind of main things
Checkmate.
that are relevant here for this conversation is CT scans. These are extremely common. It's basically a ton of X-rays. you are exposing your body to a bunch of radiation. So you're trying to do this as little as you can while getting a lot of information. And a CT scan can actually show, okay, there's most likely a cancerous tumor there. Then there's MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging. Anyway, magnets. You get into an MRI machine and it fucking pulls all your atoms with magnets like to the edge of the cells, and then it whips them all backwards, and it uses that to figure out your body. It's crazy. So an MRI is actually even more accurate, so you can see in more detail what the body looks like. In fact, let me show a CT scan because we're going to get into this. If you can pull up this, Perry. So a CT scan looks something like this, right? So this is like a slice of a CT where it's basically one image of your body that's like, okay, this is what's there.
Okay.
So, and you might have seen this with like an X-ray or something like that. It kind of looks like that. An MRI is even better at particularly soft tissue, meaning a tumor or something like that, rather than bones. Because a tumor is just, again, a mass of these cells that keep growing, or at least a malignant tumor is. And so an MRI, what's really cool about an MRI is there's no radiation. You get a person into an MRI machine and it's crazy and it's kind of scary and claustrophobic and it's expensive and it's slower and it's harder to do, but there isn't radiation. So MRIs are like great.
I did not know that. That is cool.
Yeah. So radiologists, including the one I spoke to for this, is like MRIs are kind of ideal. CT scans actually have less detail and put the body through a bunch of radiation, but it's easier to get people through CT scans.
Cheaper and easier?
Cheaper, easier. So then if you are, for example, like a hospital or the NIH in Britain, it does actually matter, right? If you can get through twice as many patients with a CT scan versus everybody get its MRIs, then that's better. Or often what happens, you get a CT scan and then you get an MRI for additional information. There's other supplementary things like a PET scan. So that allows you to see, you do a CT/PET scan, which is where you give the body radioactive sugar and then that gets eaten by the cancer because, again, the cancer is growing so rapidly that it's draining your body of resources. And so you can kind of use it to find where the cancer is. But then the ultimate thing is you do a biopsy. This is where you take a physical sample of the tumor and scientists look at it under a microscope and go, yes, this is cancer. So in general, the simple way to think about this, there's kind of 3 levels to this. If somebody thinks you might have cancer, you generally get a CT scan. So this is a whole bunch of radiation, but it's going to show does it look like there's tumors in your body somewhere? You might additionally get an MRI, which is going to be more detailed, but again, it's slower, more expensive, but it gives you more information. And then the ultimate you do or do not have cancer is a biopsy. That's where they grab the actual physical cells and look at them.
They have to find it first. Like they have to do a different scan. Okay.
Yeah. So you don't start with a biopsy because that would mean they're just randomly
what if you just
sucking stuff out.
What if I
of your
just
body?
feel it and I tell the doctor like biopsy right here or whatever?
Yeah. So you could. And that's what an AI will do. It will go just touch you every morning and look for lumps and just be like, biopsy
Your
time.
robot assistant will give you a pat down and be like,
Optimus is like,
that
you
might
need a
be-
biopsy.
And you're like, oh, your boobs are feeling a bit big. And you're like, no, I've just been gaining weight. It's like, no, biopsy time. And it just starts with a turkey baster grabbing cells.
Would not want Elon Musk Optimus to decide whether my boobs are too big and need to biopsy. But
Wow, you
wow,
can't
you
believe
don't
you're-
wanna
So
see
you're supporting cancer
progress,
today.
no.
All right.
I'm pro cancer.
No.
Should be in the villain chair.
Guys, be sure to leave a comment. Who do you think won the debate? Pro cancer or anti cancer today? All right, so this is the groundwork for all the stuff we're going to talk about. Cancer,
helpful.
fast-growing cells. We have these different ways of scanning it, and then we have a couple not great, but they sort of work and help people ways of treating it, which is chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, all with this weird dynamic where radiation is super bad for you. It kills cells, and it can cause more cancer, but we can use it to kill bad stuff and to learn about you.
Right.
So
Understood.
that is the whole dynamic. So let's focus in on, imagine you are Crafted Robot from our community, who is a trainee clinical science at the NHS in the UK. NHS, I said NIS. And whatever.
NIH.
National
Well,
Healthcare
NHS,
Service
yeah.
in the US, in the UK. For people who are not aware, UK has a national healthcare system. So basically, this is somebody who is involved with the treatment of cancer patients with radiation. So this is a person who is actually, you have a cancer patient who comes in, they're like, I have prostate cancer, and he is part of the team that's going to make sure the machinery works, kind of like what you're saying. The machinery works. They're going to use the information from the scans to determine, like, what does this person look like? They're going to figure out a plan of where to shoot the radiation gun, which again is literally a machine that's going to shoot a beam of like deadly laser into your body
At the exact tumor. Yep.
and then basically follow through with that treatment plan. So the process is basically what I just described. You have a patient come in, you have some degree of scanning, and the first thing you need to do, you have some degree of like information from the previous scans. that determined that the person even has cancer. And the first thing you need to do is create an outline or a contour of their body, because each person is different. And you need to know, if you're going to be shooting radiation into their body, you got to know exactly where the tumor is and like where their organs are, right? They're a unique combination of people.
That sounds important.
Yeah. So what that means in practice for somebody like Kraft is that he looks at hundreds of images like these, because again, a CT scan is usually just like many, many X-rays essentially. And he has to combine these together to make a map of the person's body that then they will go, okay, we can shoot radiation from this angle and with this intensity in order to get the maximum impact.
Okay.
But the first step is this auto contouring or contouring, where you are taking these X-rays basically of the human body and turning them into something like this. So I don't know if we can like zoom in on, okay, there we go. So you can see something like this is you're actually mapping specifically how this person's organs are arranged in very precise detail. And this matters, again, a lot if you're going to shoot radiation into their body.
This looks like in a video game if your lungs were like more damaged than your
Yeah. No, it looks like
you open the
Hitman
menu.
when you go into like the stealth mode and you can see the enemies. So this is a, let's say, average 3-hour process to take all of these X-ray images from the CT scan, the CT images, and turn them into this outline of the body. And this is like one of the main steps that's needed in order to get a treatment plan for this patient. This is really hard and it takes a lot of time. If you think about treating thousands of cancer patients, that is a huge bottleneck of needing a trained radiotherapy oncologist technician who is able to make one of these plans using these images. Not only is it hard, it's actually kind of subjective. You have to make educated guesses about what goes where. It turns out a lot of parts of the body are near each other. If you're trying to target the prostate, for example, there's intestines all over the place. It's not always clear what is where, right? And so you making this map of the human body, I think one of the things I wanted to express here is that I think there's an expectation or kind of feeling that doctors are all great and we need to make sure we match that. But doctors are actually subjective in a lot of ways. You're often, I talk to doctors for this.
They're human.
They're human. And two, so much of what's going on in medicine is like, you're like a detective, right? You get all these clues and you're trying to figure it out, right? It's not like you don't just get to like check a box and be like, yes, it is that. There's maybe like 50% of stuff where you're like, okay, I'm using my best guess to figure this out. And anybody with a chronic disease or anything can attest to this, where, different doctors will say different things. So this is an example of one of many elements of medicine where there's a subjective element to this, where you're trying your best, but the technician comes up with this outline over the course of 3 hours. Then the doctor will come in, confirm it's all good. And then they say, okay, now let's come up with the treatment plan to shoot this person with radiation.
Okay.
So this whole process, right? If a person feels like they maybe have cancer, they go into the hospital, they get scanned with a CT scan or an MRI. They get this imaging and a doctor will say, okay, it looks like you have cancer. They then get a biopsy to confirm that it is 100% cancer. At this point, maybe they're recommended for radiation. They go into the radiation team, which is where like Crafted Robot would be participating in this. They use the scans to build an image of their body. From there, they build a plan to shoot radiation into the body. And then over, let's say 20 sessions, it varies. This person is coming in, laying on a table and being shot with radiation in the exact way that they're trying to do.
Reporting how they're checking in on it and seeing if they're okay.
So this is an example right now.